Welcome to today's CMO Spotlight, and I am delighted to have the Vice President and Chief Marketing and Communications Officer for Texas A&M University, Ethan Braden, with me here today. Welcome, Ethan.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Like I said, I'm really excited about this conversation because being the Chief Marketing Officer of a university like Texas A&M is kind of a unique position in some ways. So I'm wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about the organization. I know we all know Texas A&M, the name and the university, but what if you could just give us a quick snapshot of the university, and then we'll talk a little bit more about your role as CMO there.
Yeah, happy to do it. It's one of probably my favorite thing to talk about. So, other than my children and my wife, I suppose. Texas A&M University, I mean, striving to be the most consequential research public university in America. 150 years as of this October.
Wow.
The largest land grant university in America and arguably the largest residential university in America. We have approximately 82,000 students at Texas A&M University. Incredible place. 1.4 billion in research expenditures last year, which is the top in the state of Texas. It's the top in the SEC. And so it's just an incredible place of duty, of spirit, of tradition, but also of innovation, of impact, of purpose. And I don't think it's cute to be the best kept secret or the tree falling in the
Right.
woods with no one there to hear about it. And so the quest really here has been how do we unearth and make Texas A&M University impossible to ignore for all that it means to its people, to this state, and to this country. So
Hmm.
incredible place to work, and I'm very blessed to have this role.
That's amazing. And I know you've been there a little over two and
Yeah.
a half years, and your previous role was CMO of another university.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious about the role of CMO within Texas A&M. What does that mean? Like, what does your team look like? What is your responsibility for the university?
Yeah, much like I ran at Purdue, and really I learned from Dan Dillon at Arizona State, we operate in an environment that we call integrated independence. Some people call it, some people will talk about centralized versus decentralized. I don't love those words. What I really love is kind of what I learned at Lilly, which is that great brands are built at the global level and then localized or implemented locally. And so
Hmm.
we have a central marketing team here that really encompasses the brand. It encompasses reputation management and crisis and incidents. It encompasses internal communications, all things digital, all things creative. And really, we're the enterprise driver of the brand and the enterprise storyteller of Texas A&M University. We've defined a brand platform that then creates freedom within a framework for the colleges, the units, the divisions, other campuses to get in character with. But at the end of the day, it's about coming to the audiences, consistently, but with these entities, the College of Engineering versus the College of Education being able to localize as the best form of themselves at Texas A&M University. And so some days I'm the conductor of the orchestra, and other days I'm
Hmm.
the biggest brand evangelist around here. But at the end of the day, we want to tell the nation, we want to tell the world this special story and stories of Texas A&M University. And so we play that role. We're not the driven, we're the driver of the brand.
I like that. And so I think you graduated from Willamette University and ended up getting your MBA from Notre Dame. I know you mentioned Lilly. You spent, I think, a little over 10 years there at Eli Lilly before moving on to I think, and then Purdue and then Texas A&M. So I'm just wondering if you could just give us a little bit of your career path that led you to this role. Like
Sure.
how did this all come about?
Yeah, as you mentioned, was lucky enough to go to Notre Dame for my MBA, and then started my career in a very different environment than Texas A&M University in most senses, and that was at Eli Lilly and Company, and that's where I learned really the discipline of brand and audience understanding and reputation and business impact. And then I had the opportunity to follow a mentor to Purdue, and that's where I really had the chance to apply that discipline in higher education, where it's very needed. And that work, much like what we did at Lilly, was very and deeply mission driven.
Mhm.
And so that combination and the opportunity eventually led me here to Texas A&M University. And it's, in my mind, one of the very few universities with the scale, the values, the history, and the public service mission that really matter nationally in a very distinctive way. And so I just love to help build brands and teams that people love and trust
Mhm.
and to bring their story to life. And so that's been fun. I've been drawn to organizations that are really trying to do something bigger than sell a product or just win a news cycle.
Hmm.
And A&M's one of those. It's got real substance, our service, our research, our national security, our work with veterans, agriculture, engineering, but also the deep sense of duty. And so my job is to make that substance more visible and far more understood. And so I think in some ways to conclude, the path probably only makes sense looking backwards, but went from brand and business discipline to higher ed to now a university whose story really deserves a much larger scale.
Hmm. Hmm. And we'll talk more about some of the ways that you've been able to get that story out. I know there's an article that just was published about some of the things y'all have done, and it's pretty phenomenal. I'm curious if there's a piece of advice that either you wish you got when you were younger in your career, or maybe you'd give to somebody that's just starting out in their marketing journey.
Yeah, I think there's two for me. I think the first is um, it's the strategic marketers. It's the somewhat classically trained marketers that I probably respect and emulate the most. And what I think that means is learning the craft and learning the business before you learn the campaign. It's so easy for folks to go to shiny objects or tactics, et cetera. But the best marketers aren't just good at making things look good. They really understand audience. They understand their organization or their product or institution. They understand the economics and the business model of what's taking place. They understand the culture and they understand the bigger decisions that are being made. And so I first thing I would stress is being really a student of the function and of the business long
Hmm.
before we get into the tactics. And then I think the second one is always be curious. I think the best marketers are students of culture. They're studying the craft. They're curious about where people are paying attention, what people care about, how brands can show up in a way that feels useful and not necessarily forced. And so all of that together, I think the job is really about creating meaning, attention, and action. And to do that, you got to understand the business, you got to understand the craft, and you got to always be curious because the space and the discipline are always evolving so fast.
Hmm. Um, yeah, curiosity is key. And I'd say empathy too, where understanding who your consumer is and then being curious about them. Um,
And
so
that's
so I
something we work
believe.
on a lot, right? Like that audience understanding, as Mark Ritson calls it, market orientation. I mean, especially interesting here because you work with a lot of Aggies. And one of the
Hmm.
things I tell them is you have to divorce your experience. The minute you became
Hmm.
the marketer of the place, you literally, in many respects, you got to divorce the experience you had and you got to understand our audiences and where they're coming from first and foremost. And so that empathy, that understanding, that curiosity, that beginner's mindset, all of that is so key to get it right.
Hmm. I believe everybody's got a superpower. So I'm curious what you feel your superpower is.
Yeah, I think it's taking an organization's mission, an organization's essence, crafting that, refining that, pruning that, and bringing it to the market meaningfully. We
Hmm.
love getting to the heart of things and bringing it out to the market and saying, is this, meaningful to you? Is this compelling? Is this understandable? And can you demand it? And so when we
Hmm.
crafted the line a year ago that we were less concerned about being the best university in the nation and far more concerned about being the best university for the nation, to me, that was when we hit a really sweet spot of how do you bring a person or a product or an institution's essence to life through storytelling?
Hmm.
That's what I think we and I try to do best.
Yeah, I love that transition, being the best in the nation to being the best for the nation. That's pretty awesome. I'm curious if there's some specific values that you either want to demonstrate as a leader, or maybe you would demand that anybody on your team would have these values.
Yeah, I mean, I think I hit one, and that's that curiosity piece. I want
Yeah.
tenacious,
Mm.
curious marketers.
Hmm.
Have the drive and the killer instinct and the motor and the interest to go out and unearth and find the amazing emotive human stories. And so tenacious or tenacity, curiosity are two. I think about courage a lot. I think marketing and communications teams have to be courageous in two forms. One, you'll never be criticized by being safe. And so the courage to do things, especially in justice of the organization and in justice to the audience, I think is rare and also sets the best marketers apart. But I also think There's courage in saying that an idea is off brand, or a message is unclear, or a message
Hmm.
or a metric is misleading, or a project should not be a priority. And so I think that also takes a level of courage to be a great marketer. And then lastly, trust. I mean, trust is the biggest. I want to lead people to feel trusted to lead, to make their decisions, to bring their expertise to the table. But that also comes with accountability. And so we owe our product or our institution not just our best effort, but our best judgment. And so that trust piece is so, so critical.
Hmm. Hmm. So here at Setup, we're marketing matchmakers. We
Mhm.
connect brands and
Mhm.
marketing agencies
Mhm.
together. And because we live in that space, we're not on the client side, on the brand side. We're not an agency. We live in
Yep.
that space in between. We have a pretty unique perspective on that relationship between the two sides. So I'm just curious how you work with marketing agencies generally.
Yeah, I mean, I think I learned it. It was such a blessing to work at Lilly, and it was such a great marketing training ground. And
Hmm.
that's where I learned to work with agencies or partners for the first time. And then that shapes, I think, how you work with them in the future and how you teach, in many respects, marketers in higher ed who may not have worked with agencies or partners how to be a good partner and a good client in that regard. And so I think, the best relationships in that regard are not transactional. They're not just go make us a thing. They're actually
Hmm.
strategic partnerships that are built on trust. They're built on clear briefs. They're built on honest feedback, and they're really built on a shared understanding of the audience and the objective.
Hmm.
So at Lilly in particular, I think of agency relationships we had where I like to say that success was often evident when you forgot who was wearing which badge.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a key one. I think the other one is I don't want agencies just to validate our assumptions. I want agency partners that make us better, that challenge
Hmm.
us, that pressure test our ideas, that help us see around corners, that think of things that we're not thinking of. And
Hmm.
so that's the key is that they come onto the team. We forget who's who, and we're all in the pursuit of greatness, in our work. And I think when you can find that, that's really special. I don't believe everyone on our team, has to be employed by Texas A&M University. I want
Right.
partners and
Right.
freelancers and vendors and consultants that make an ecosystem that ultimately becomes our organizational chart. But I think those are some of the principles that define great relationships. And it's the worst thing a client can do is just give vague direction to somebody and then punish the agency for guessing wrong. And so that sort of partnership, that sort of clear direction, that sort of understanding of what we're trying to accomplish is key, I think, for those relationships to work out.
Yeah, you used a keyword that I love, and we talk a lot about here, which is just ecosystem.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of ecosystem consulting where a client will say, I need to understand, my team, the agencies that support
Yep.
us, the vendors, and how do they all fit together and how do they work together? And so we do quite a bit of that kind of ecosystem, marketing ecosystem consulting work.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious if there are some disciplines of marketing that you feel you need to own in-house
Yeah.
because they're key and core to your business in some way? And
Mhm.
are there other disciplines of marketing that you really want to get outside perspective or outside expertise on?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's for us, we have to own the strategy.
Hmm.
We have to own deep audience or customer understanding. Those are critical, I think, for everyone, frankly, on our team to understand, to embrace, to propel. When I start to think about what can go outside, oftentimes it's skill sets that are either difficult or expensive. Maybe they're sporadic, but certainly difficult and expensive
Hmm.
to employ full time and employ full time at a public university. And so, when it comes to market research, when it comes to the generation of deep human insights, those are tactics or skills that I'm really comfortable going out and paying for the
Hmm.
expertise and the skill to help us in those spaces. And so we've worked with, firms like Brand Trust and Evidenza, et cetera, where that wasn't something we were going to do internal.
Hmm.
And I wanted them to, give us the shot in the arm of their expertise that really propels the business at that point. And so I think, key to us is the understanding the strategy. A lot of other things. I'm very happy freelancing or working with a partner on, provided we all get up to speed on, again, that strategy, that understanding, what we're trying to accomplish. So there's not leakage. So it's not a game of telephone,
Hmm.
but that rather that we're representing the mission very authentically.
Great. Yeah, and obviously the answer to that question varies wildly
Yeah.
too about the makeup and structure of your team. Like for some companies, for example, they may have a really robust marketing automation and CRM team in
Right.
house, and so they don't need as much external
Yep.
support in that area. Other teams have nothing, and they need all of the support external. But
Yeah.
it sounds like you have a good balance of things that you feel like, my team needs to own, and things that you feel like that external perspective is going to give us value, either because of expertise or because of perspective.
Yeah. At Purdue in particular, it's 2026, 7 years now. Sometimes you learn about what you need to outsource just by failing internally. And we
Hmm.
failed enough times, particularly in the market research space, that I went and found a friend and colleague at Eli Lilly and Company who had retired, and he's been consulting and helping them with market research now for 7 years.
Hmm. Hmm.
He's part of the team,
Yeah.
and he's
Yeah.
critical, and they're confident in his competence of what he can offer to them, and so there's not a reason to go insource that. It's a really good blend, and so I'm always looking
Hmm.
for where that can be. And the other piece of that, you spoke of ecosystem and organization. This is the year that the org chart for me is I used to think it was profound to include our partners and freelancers and consultants, et cetera. Now it's AI, right? So now my org
Hmm.
chart
Yeah.
is an ecosystem not only of all of that, but also of the AI tools and resources that we have to deploy, oftentimes in complement or in sometimes in lieu of a person.
Yeah, makes sense. So I'm curious if there's, or how you demonstrate the value of marketing to the non-marketing functions within the organization that maybe sometimes even fancy themselves as amateur marketers.
Yeah, everyone's a marketer, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And that's been, that's a journey.
Hmm.
I wouldn't say that we're great at it, but it's been a journey, and I think it's a key, huge piece of my role. When the president brought me here a couple of years ago, and one of the many reasons I came, he gave me the autonomy, the vision, and the resources to be successful in that space. And he said, "This is a place where we don't know what great marketing looks like, what it takes, or what it costs, but you do." And so that would set me up
Hmm.
for success in that regard. Also, I think it's about assessing, and if it's not there, creating the appetite for what we're going to go accomplish, right? This is a place where I think universally we have the appetite to tell the story powerfully of this place and not be a sleeping giant with unlimited potential. And so that evangelizing, I think, is key. We talk a lot about marketing the marketing, and making sure people understand what we do and what it produces. But at the end of the day, to me, you demonstrate value by connecting the marketing to institutional outcomes, not just marketing activity. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, we track reach or visibility or impressions, for instance. But the more important questions are more people aware of us because of our work?
Hmm.
Do they understand us better because of our work? Do they trust us more because of our work? Do they prefer us more because of our work? Are we creating demand in students, in faculty, in partners, in donors, in advocates? When I can
Hmm.
connect my marketing to institutional outcomes, I do create confidence in the competence and confidence in the discipline of what we're doing. And I think
Hmm.
that gives us the autonomy and it gives us the resources to propel that. We're accountable to more than just output. We have to be accountable for actual movement, for
Hmm.
an alignment with the realization of the organization's goals and vision. And so for us, that has to be the case. We have to be part of the business outcome to be relevant and trusted.
Hmm. I'm curious if there's a campaign or a program that taught you important lessons, either because they were a huge success and you want to emulate that again in the future, or maybe they were a flop and you just
Yeah.
taught you something that you really needed to learn.
Yeah, there's two that come to mind that I think are fun. The first is when I got here, we had a commercial that I couldn't find many people that were proponents of it. And so I wasn't sure why we had it on the air or why we had it on YouTube, because it positioned the place as very insular. It was inside jokes, it was inside baseball, it was
Mm,
inside verbiage, and it kind of said to the world, stay out.
Hmm.
And what we want is the opposite. And so we scrapped it in the summer, actually, and we, in a very fast time, replaced it for the start of the school year and for the start of the football season. And when we crafted it, I told the team that we were launching at Labor Day weekend. I said, by the end of the weekend, by Tuesday, I want 1 million views of it. The previous commercial had at that point been on the air maybe 12 months, and it was sitting at 30,000 YouTube views, which to me
Hmm.
was not acceptable. And I
Yeah.
think the team thought I was crazy. And I said, no, we can work with YouTube, right? There's an art and a science here to be successful.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the reach planner. Talk to me about what you need. And lo and behold, two things happened. One, by the time we got to that Tuesday, we had over 2 million views on that video. It was the
Wow.
second video in A&M's history to ever amass 1 million views, and the previous one, the only one on the catalog that had ever done it, it took 13 years to do so. That we did that
Wow.
in days. That was a key learning, I think, for the team. The other piece of that was by the time we spent the budget that I asked for to get to the 1 million views, we had 8.5 million views. So it was
Wow.
incredibly effective and efficient content. So that was probably
Yeah.
number one. And that taught the team, I think, to think bigger and also go out and master the art and the science to achieve the objective we wanted. And
Hmm.
not the
Hmm.
views are the only piece of it. 80% of those views are outside the state of Texas. That was key so that we could start to share that message with those that don't
Yeah.
embrace yet the spirit of Aggieland. But I think that sort of pursuit raised the bar, and it also gave the team a huge win, which put wind in their sails for the future. That was probably the
Hmm.
first. And then the other one I think is the work that we're doing in motorsports right now. Because it's on paper, somebody might think why are you guys doing that? Or is it just sponsorship? But for us, it's never been about putting a logo on a car. It's about finding a cultural stage where A&M's values already belong. And what it's
Hmm.
taught me is that when that fit is real, the audience can feel it. And so the work doesn't have to be over explained, it just makes sense. And that
Hmm.
culminated a few weeks ago when the bet that we had placed and the partnership that we had created with Meyershank Racing and Felix Rosenquist paid off in an Indianapolis 500 win with A&M on the helmet, with A&M on the fire suit, with A&M on the car, and all of the exposure and the interest and the
Hmm.
intrigue that created for the sake of our storytelling. And so that's been a really fun bet, which has been guided by both data and intuition
Hmm.
because the visibility was enormous. The stories become bigger because it connected to something authentic, and that was the competition, that was the engineering, that was the tradition and the pride that come with A&M. That wasn't about just sponsorship, it was about strategic presence. And the team is
Hmm.
seeing that and feeling that. And again, those wins give them confidence.
That's awesome. I'm curious what the difference in the creative and the message was from the old video that you said was a lot of inside jokes and insular, College Station focus maybe or something, to the general message of the
Yeah.
video that went viral or that
Yeah.
caught a lot of that got spread far and wide.
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, just to preface, when you walk into the Texas A&M Hotel and Conference Center, there is a beautiful stone out in front of it with the Aggie proverb etched into it. And the Aggie proverb reads, "From the outside looking in, you can't understand it. And from the inside looking out, we can't explain it." And I absolutely respect and get the mystique of that. I've also said for 2.5 years, that's bad marketing.
Hmm.
Because if the world can't understand us, they can't
Right.
demand us. And if we can't explain it, they will never understand it. Going back to the empathy that we spoke about earlier in the call. And so the previous commercial, and no disrespect to those people or the agencies, et cetera, started off with the words, "We're not weird, but dot, dot, dot." Right?
Yeah.
Not a great way to invite folks in
Right.
necessarily. And then the rest of the commercial, you really had to understand Aggie tradition and Aggie land to get the thumbs ups and the gigums and the dominoes and the things that were there. And it was a coach actually who said, "Can you take it down? It's killing me in recruiting." And so
Hmm.
it was sort of like, we're a group, you don't understand us, we don't really care, stay out, we'll do our thing.
Right.
It was also at a period of time where I think A&M was getting beat up in some respects because I've learned if you don't fill the void in the public's mind of what you stand for and why they should care, someone else will fill it for you. And
Hmm.
so the commercial was actually an answer in a critical period to fill that void of what is Texas A&M University? What does it stand for, and why should the world care? And so the commercial at that point took that head on. We called it a bridge campaign because we hadn't built our full brand platform out yet. But it was titled, "What does Texas A&M University stand for?" And we
Hmm.
overtly on the nose brought to life the core values that are so critical and so embraced around here. And that was the first time I think we said, "Hey, we want you to come in. This is one of the most hospitable and howdy
Right.
places in the world. We don't want to keep you out. We want to bring you in and see what's so special." And so at the end of it, it even says, "Come stand with us." And it was an invitation to understand us and to join us. And that did
Mhm.
very, very well.
That's great. Okay, I want to wrap things up with three kind of rapid fire kind of
Okay.
questions. The first is, what is a quote or a book or a movie or a sports team or a band that inspires you? And what is it about that thing that inspires you most?
Yeah, that's a dangerous one. My team here and my previous teams will probably tell you we could go 30 minutes on that.
Okay.
Whether it's quoting Moneyball or whether it's quoting Charlie Wilson's War or other obscure things. But I was thinking about this question, and I'll tell you the one that came up the most recently. I have one of the world's greatest mentors in the form of a gentleman by the name of Mark Ferrara, who's in Indianapolis. He was the VP of HR at Eli Lilly and Company, and then had a great career thereafter at Disney as well, and now consults some wonderful people. But we were on the phone the other day talking about what drives me, where I want to go in the future, what we want to accomplish here at Texas A&M, and he always has these prophetic quotations. And one of the things he said to me was, he said, "Ethan, where you find discretionary effort, you find success."
Hmm.
And I love that idea. I think it has to do also with Naval Ravikant's quote, where he says, "Find something that to you is play, that to everyone else is work."
Hmm.
When I think about myself, when I think about the work we're doing, and in particular, as I think about my teammates and how we create this culture, what I want is to find folks. It's not just that they understand the mission, but they're on a mission. It's
Hmm.
part of their DNA to serve this place. And when you do that, you get that discretionary effort. They're willing to run through walls. They're willing to work harder. They're willing to pour
Hmm.
in and raise the bar. And when you get that, that's where I think success comes from. So I love this idea of where you can find discretionary effort, you find success. And I want
Hmm.
the people that are willing to give this place discretionary effort because I know we will be wildly successful in the process and we will have a ton of fun in the process as well.
Awesome. So, other than your family, who you mentioned, which isn't too easy an answer, where do you find joy outside of work?
It is. I'll sidestep your question just briefly and say it is my family and my wonderful wife. I've got a almost 10-year-old, almost 6-year-old, and 3-year-old, and the most caring and understanding and decent wife in the world. And so they give me incredible joy. But the other thing I'll tell you about College Station and Texas A&M University is the next step for me would be our friend group. We made more friends and have made more friends at Texas A&M in the first 5 months that we were here than the 5 years we were at Purdue. And that's no slam on it.
Wow.
It was COVID, it was our neighborhood, and we had a lovely
Yeah, yeah,
neighborhood.
yeah.
But the people here are just the warmest, most
Mm,
wonderful folks. And so I've found a friend group, which as a result has created a wife friend group, which as a result has brought together our, whatever the number is, 16 kids, maybe between us.
mm.
And it's just the purest, strongest form of friendship and sort of family by choice that I've ever experienced. And so if we're not alone as a family, we are with that group. And I think over my shoulder, I've got Ted Lasso, but I got the cup there as well. This group of guys and we've named ourselves the Diamond Dogs from Ted Lasso.
Yep, yep,
And we
yep.
are sickening in terms of the amount that we text each day. But the
Yeah.
reality is that finding that community here in College Station of really different and wonderful and impressive, in this case, men, that we are, I hope, iron on iron and sharpening each other daily.
Hmm.
Whether it's we're golfing or we're working out in the morning or we're having dinner on Friday nights, if I'm not alone with my family, it's usually the family plus them.
Hmm. That's awesome. That's great. Okay, last question before we wrap is just, is there a brand that you've never worked on that you really admire, and what is it that you admire most about that brand?
Yeah, I was thinking about this one too. There's a lot. But the one I think I would talk about is Yeti. I
Mm,
love Yeti. Um, and I love one that we have an Aggie founder, the
Hmm.
Siders brothers. We've got one Aggie and one guy that chose to go to a different school that in the news right now is not terribly popular, but that's okay. But I love Yeti, and one of the reasons I love Yeti is I think I listened to Pauly Deary on a podcast not long ago, and he's since moved on to Athletic Greens. But he talked about again that deep sense of understanding of audience, and then all the work that they've done to gain the trust and relevance and appreciation of that audience. And so, at the end of the day, they're not, I've got Yetis on my desk, but they're not marketing to me. They are
Hmm.
focused on get you out in the wild and keep you there longer. And I love that they've got that strong insight. They've got a strong understanding of the customer and the audience and the service that they want to provide to them. And they'll get the spillover of the, weekend warriors like myself and my Yetis on my desk. But at the end of the day, they're about the fishermen, they're about the hunters, they're about the lifeguards in Oahu, where he talks about, why can't Stanley disrupt you? And he says, well, we've been investing in these audiences for 10 years. They're not
Yeah.
groups you can just break into with a gimmick or a scheme. We have built real trust and relevance in these groups, and they stay focused there. So I just love the work, and I think their creative storytelling, their videography, et cetera, is beautiful. I think they're
Hmm.
a neat brand, and maybe if I could clone myself, I'd love to go be their CMO.
Yeah. Cool. Very cool. I love it. Well, Ethan Braden, Vice President, Chief Marketing and Communications Officer for Texas A&M University. Thanks so much, Ethan. This has been such a joy to have this conversation with you.
No, I really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for letting me talk about Texas A&M so much.